Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And I have got just an incredible player, just first-class guy, great human being, total professional. And I'm a fan of the music. We're with Zach Blair from Rise Against. He's a lead guitar player. He's been with the band quite some time. A couple of quick announcements. I want to thank Jason Hall from Western Addiction for connecting us. Jason, thank you very much. And also make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe to subscribe to the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button down there or up there somewhere, and the little icon that's a bell that helps us out with the YouTube algorithms. Thank you for that. All right, tell you about Zach. And let me tell you, this guy is such a good guitar player, man. And I really want you to pay close attention to what he's doing, because he's you do not hear the clarity and the quality of that kind of playing very often. It's so clean. Anyway, let me shut up, stop sounding like a fanboy. Zach's a lead guitarist, and he sings background vocals for the Chicago punk/hard rock band Rise Against. Before joining Rise Against in early 2007, he was a member of the melodic hardcore group Only Crime, along with his brother Doni. And Doni currently plays with another one of my favorite bands, the Toadies. The Blair brothers were founding members of the bands Hagfish and Armstrong. And Zach, tell me if I mess up any of these names. Zach was also Flattus Maximus of the metal band Gwar from 99 to 2002. He made a return to Gwar as Splattus Maximus on the 2013 album Battle Maximus. I wouldn't pronounce any of these things right. I can't be in your
page, the Splattus Maximus and everything.
What's that?
That on my Wikipedia page?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Is that? Oh, I mean, I couldn't believe they had this other stuff. Hold on. He's also been a second touring guitarist for a band called The Loved Ones, and he's second guitarist on the instrumental band The Mag Sevens album. And this is a great title. The Future is Ours, If You Can Count. He's also in another band you just told me about, and we'll talk about this later, called the Drakulas. And he's been on all the Rise Against albums since 2008's Appeal to Reason. And this is like, when I see stuff like this, and I'll ask you about it later, according to Wikipedia, Zach is straight edge, a vegetarian, and an animal rights advocate. So number one, how do people know this? Number two, why is that? Like,
I don't understand who, okay, all of that's accurate, by the way, but I don't know who knows that much about me and who has that kind of time on their hands to update something about somebody they don't know. It's fascinating to me.
Thank you. I mean, me too.
Thanks. It's great. But
it's nice, but
yeah, totally. All of that stuff is true. The Gwar detail is so nuanced because, yes, I was Flattus Maximus and Gwar. And what happened was the guy that replaced me, I quit in about 2002, 2003. A guy named Corey Smoot replaced me, a fantastic guitar player. Corey unfortunately died.
Oh,
and man. I basically was just like, well, they didn't want to stop. They didn't want to slow down. They wanted to keep going. They were due to start recording a record, start working on a record. And so I was really busy with Rise Against at that point, but we just all agreed, like, well, I'll come back, I won't be able to tour. I won't be able to do it. But when we were together before, I had written a lot in the band. And so it was just great to kind of go back and be able to rekindle that. And, but because Corey had died, they retired the Flattus Maximus character.
Right.
So
I figured
that record, I ended up writing and recording half of a record called Battle Maximus. And during that process, they found the guy that's playing guitar for them now, a guy named Brent Purgeson, who's an amazing guitar player, and he's great. But they created a new character for him called Pustulus Maximus. He's like the cousin or something. So I had to go under a different name on that record because they had retired the character, of course. And so I went under Splattus. But it's like just a little credit on the back of the record. It's crazy somebody even saw that, to be honest with you.
These guys have like a mind map of like all the name. I couldn't, like, I would need a chart.
And there's, at any given time, there's 30 people involved with Gwar. We would do tours where the bus was basically buses for like hockey teams where the whole bus was just bunks. There wasn't even any lounges because we would take out all these extraneous characters and do these huge shows. And, you know, it was great. It was like basically music theater. It was like music theater. And it was amazing. You know, and it just ended up being not exactly what I felt in my heart of hearts at the time I was cut out to do. I had a big history and a black background with thrash metal and metal and stuff, but also punk rock. My brother and I, being from Texas, we didn't have an allegiance to any coast. You know, we just wanted to play aggressive, pissed off music that was counterculture that would piss people off in our shitty little conservative Texas town. You know, whether it's Slayer or Black Flag, we were all in. So I had a background with both, so I was able to sort of like, you know, as I was learning how to double pick and downstroke chug and all that, I was also learning how to move bar chords around and do that, which ended up helping because later in life, because punk sort of, what we know as punk sort of melded with that heavier guitar playing style and the more syncopated, alternate picked, double picked leads and things like that. It all sort of came together with what they were calling crossover at the time. It all just became sort of the vernacular. So I ended up playing in metal bands and punk bands, you know, and Gwar and, you know, Rise Against. But anyway, I was so happy to be able to go back because Dave Brockie, who was the legendary singer of Gwar, Odorous Youngus, he ended up dying as they were touring that record that we did together. And so I was able to sort of it's tragic, terrible, and awful. So I was able to make the last record with him, which is just amazing. I'm so glad I got to do that.
That's cool, man. And for those of you listening to the audio instead of watching on YouTube, if Jason Statham lost like 30 pounds, that's Zach right there. I'm just looking. You look just like, did anybody ever tell you that?
Yeah,
man.
Hey, I'll take it because hey, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I mean, I'll take it. I love that guy. He's great.
Oh, he's awesome, man. Yeah,
he's also unrepentant baldy. You know, like he's in Hollywood now. He could have like, you know, pretended like he got hair and all that shit. Just always shaved. He's always been a baldy. I started going bald when I was like in high school, so I was just kind of like, well, what am I going to do? You know what I mean?
It's a pain to shave this thing, isn't it? Though it's like work. It's like a job, man.
You know, I just do the clippers with no guard, and I've got one.
Okay.
Well, so I'm just like, I found that my brand, and when mine breaks, I just get new ones and just keep going.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put this down. I'm going to ask you at the end because I use a razor. It's like, it's too much time, man. I don't, you know, I don't look good enough to spend that time on this, you know?
It takes forever, man.
Yeah, man. The return on investment's not there for me.
Too, so it's just like, it takes,
See, talk about everything here. Man, tell me how you got started in the music business and like maybe what was your first break?
My brother and I, like I said, we grew up in a really shitty little town in Texas, and our dad, fortunately, was like the local classic rock DJ on the shitty little, you know, however many watt radio station. That's what he did for a living.
That is so wild.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, the amount of music you guys must have been exposed to had to be off the,
And our dad was like sort of the early day sort of record store geek, even though he didn't work at a record store, but he was like sort of he had a very eclectic music taste. He was very finicky about the music he liked. He was very but he had great taste, and he had great record collection. And so one of the fringe benefits of being a DJ was he was able to bring home rock, like records, you know? So we had, and my dad liked heavier stuff. So it was, you know, Mountain and Blue Cheer and Vanilla Fudge and
great bands,
Experience and The Who. And so we grew up with that, definitely Black Sabbath. And so that was, you know, and even like, you know, Robin Trower and, you know, just anything that was like, he liked, you know, the current things like the Eagles and Steely Dan as well, but he definitely had more of a penchant for the heavier shit. And then prog rock, you know, he loved King Crimson, he loved Peter Gabriel, Genesis, and My Vision Orchestra. So we had all this stuff. And so for us, it was like, we always looked up, idolized our dad and always wanted to impress him, you know, and he became sort of a football dad, like, you know, where your dad, just like most American dads, want their sons to go and, you know, basically kill themselves and play some sort of full contact. And our dad sort of gave us a guitar and a bass. So it's just like, you guys are going to do this now.
That's really cool.
And we loved it. And we sort of had an inborn sort of affinity for it as well. And, you know, our mother was a florist, our dad was a DJ. So we were broke. And,
my mother was a florist. My dad was a DJ, so we were broke. That's
we were broke. So I remember, you know, we would hawk the TV, but we never hawked the stereo. It was always there.
Right, I gotcha.
Yeah, and so my brother and I, at a certain point, of course, got into our own music. And I think, you know, one of the first bands we sort of got on our own was Metallica. And that ended up being a gateway drug to everything else and my dad loved them. You know, we'd come home and my dad would have, like, you know, the Ride the Lightning album or whatever. He'd be headphones listening to it to, like, get away from our mom. And we always lived in an apartment complex, like 2-bedroom apartment, where my brother and I shared a room. You know, we were broke. And Dad would come home, and I mean, then we started getting into heavier shit and like Possessed and, you know, Dark Angel and bands like that. And my dad would listen to them. Like, he loved it all.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. But that ended up being our thing. And so through like the t-shirts and the thank you lists of the records we were buying, we were getting into punk rock and all this other stuff. So at that time, this is the late 80s. At that time, it was like the crossover thing was happening. So we had DRI and you know, the thrash metal scene out of the Bay Area, or the death metal scene out of Florida.
Yeah, a lot of here in Tampa. There was a ton of.
Oh my God, yeah, great stuff too. You know, like Morbid Angel or Deicide or whatever. And we were into all of it. We got into all of it, but we also got into the punk rock scene and the SST records from Black Flag, which ended up being Descendants, and my brother and I had this really long, and still do, on-running sort of career with those guys. They ended up being our favorite band, and we started Hagfish just to basically rip them off, essentially. I'm getting ahead. I tend to do that.
No, man, go ahead. Be you.
But so for us, it was just, there wasn't much of it's not that there wasn't much of a choice, but we could have done anything we wanted to do. But my dad was so, everything was music for him. So for us, it was this sort of natural progression. And it's all I ever wanted to do. I never thought of doing anything else, you know. Subsequently, our dad died when I was in senior year.
Oh, man, I'm so sorry.
Oh, thanks, man.
Oh.
He died of colon cancer. He was 44.
Oh, so, my God.
I know, right? And I quit high school my senior year, halfway through, and put it all into this, you know. So thankfully, you know, it worked out, but there was a lot of times, there was a lot of close calls, and a lot of times I was like, well, I'm just gonna be living on a fucking couch for the rest of my life. So, you know.
Let me ask you, if you're comfortable talking about this. I've had a lot of people come on, not a lot, but, you know, a handful, and like one guitar player I'm thinking of, like, third generation, you know, he was the only, all the males in his family die of cardiac issues at like 50, and he was like 55, 56. So he was like, was that weird for you when you crossed the age that your dad passed at? That had to.
And it's funny because it was something I was a little bit obsessed with. Getting.
How could you not be? How could you not be?
Yeah, I mean, I live a very, very different lifestyle than my dad. My dad ate terribly. He was overweight. He drank. He smoked. He did drugs. He didn't smoke cigarettes. He smoked pot like it was, you know, going out of style. He didn't take care of himself, you know.
Yeah.
And as a result, starting at like 20, I started eating right, working out, exercising. I never drank, smoked, or did drugs as a direct result of that. Even before he died, my brother and I decided not to start doing that in high school and stuff. So a lot of his choices ended up being his choices in life ended up being examples for me that, you know, like what I didn't do.
Not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to do this. And I knew that this required you to be, the healthier you could be, the longer you had doing this. Because it is rigorous. You know, there's sleepless nights. And it sounds like anytime you talk about the sort of rigor of this lifestyle, people just go, oh, you know, poor fucking musician or whatever. But it can be
incredibly difficult. I mean, I could not do, I mean, this is an incredibly difficult living, man. I don't care what level you're performing at. Because first of all, you didn't start at that fucking level. That's for sure.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
But it's a incredibly difficult living, man.
It's rough. And when you're out there doing it, you know, you're just in it. So you're not thinking. And, you know, you're looking at, you know, you're playing a string of festivals. And you're like, oh, there's 85,000 people here tonight. You know what I mean? You don't think about the significance of that, or how crazy that is, until after. It's like, holy shit, there's 85,000 people. And then you get in a bus and you drive overnight and sleep on the bus overnight, and you get out and you do it again. And then you do it again. And you do that for a month with maybe a day off a week. And then you go home for 2 weeks, and then you go and do it again, you know, for another month or two or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, there's been many years where I was gone for 9-10 months of that year. And I mean, in 25 years of doing this, maybe a little over, there's been more years like that than there have been like this where I'm actually home.
And you're only home because of COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, I
would be gone right now. I would have gone for about 2 months already. So yeah. And out of your schedule, not around your loved ones, not having a normal sleep schedule, not having, you know, any sort of anchor to sort of grab onto. It's just this perpetual forward motion. And the only thing that really matters is playing every night to kids that love your band, and they don't give a fuck if your day's bad, if you had a fight with your wife, you know, whatever. If you're sick, I mean, not malicious. They don't know what you're going through.
It's not their business.
Right. You paid a ticket to see me. This is the first time I've ever played this song in my life. You know, you're experiencing this with me. So you got to give them everyone that every night.
Yeah.
And that takes its toll. You know, that gets hard after a while.
Oh, it's fair. I think the people that react like, oh, poor rock star, you know, it's easy to look at anything that anybody has going on in their life for a day, a week.
Sure.
But man, do that shit every day. Even being in a relationship, you know, even if it's a good relationship, that must be so easy. You're seeing us, you know, it's years of work and give and take and, you know, helping and learning and, you know, nothing good is typically easy.
Definitely. And that's a great adage. It's like nothing worthwhile is easy. You know?
Yeah, because then everybody would have it. There's got to be a vet. There's got to be a filter, you know, for how bad do you want it, man?
It's cost me in many relationships. It's cost me, you know, just a normal way of life, which I don't think I would have adhered to very well anyway. Again, I don't know what the hell I would have done if I didn't do this. It's all I've ever been good at. So I definitely am not complaining, you know.
Sure.
It is nice lately to be able to have sort of a normal lifestyle. But I mean, to be quite frank with you, I'm bored off my ass. Yeah. And, you know, I'm ready to fucking do whatever it is we need to do, you know. If the lights were on tomorrow and it was like we had to go tour next week, I'd be all in.
Yeah, I'm sure. And man, a pat on your back, and thank you for answering that question about your dad. But you got to give yourself. I don't know if you've done that. I hope you've given yourself credit, because your brother's decision to look at someone's behavior that was very influential on you, saying, you know, that's not the thing to do. That's not an easy thing to do.
Well, thank you. As kids also looking up to him, we've thought about that before. Like, wow, why did we you know, we sort of followed in his footsteps every other way, and we're super impressed by everything he did. So why did we choose to not do that? And I think there was also the thing of like our shitty town we hated so much, and we hated our fellow students so much. We had a real genuine disdain for everyone in school because they fucked with us because we were the two weirdos.
Yeah.
Wore like, you know, thrash metal and punk rock shirts and had long hair. And everyone knew we were poor because our parents would drop us off at school in like really shitty cars.
Right.
Or swinging and shit. So we hated them so much that they also, at that age, when you are choosing to sort of go party and drink and smoke and do drugs, everyone was doing that. So it wasn't just that our dad did it and we saw it wasn't working out for him and then he was having health problems already. It was also that everyone that we fucking hated were doing it too. And so we didn't want to be like them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's like righteous indignation, like, fuck that. Yeah, man.
We wanted to be like, you know what? Fuck, you're doing this, fuck you. And as a result, I'm an adult and I've had a level of success, all that shit, but I still have this in my car. It's like all of those people stayed in that shitty town, and my brother and I got to go do what we're doing that we wanted to do back then.
Yeah.
And I can't help but, you know, admit to the immaturity level of how solace I take in the fact that happened.
Yeah, but you know, man, there's something to be said when you do come from sort of like a disadvantaged situation and you somehow don't turn into an asshole about it and you actually do something good for yourself. I'm with you on that. I get that. I'm very similar to that. So I understand that 100%. There's a lot of joy in being able to say, I did it my way, you know, really, basically, right?
Because we had every powers that be except our parents in our apartment, everyone else in Sherman. You know, you mean you're not Christians, you're not doing this, you're not staying in town, you're not getting a job, you're not going to college, you're not going to graduate high school, you know, and all these things at the time I knew that was like, oh, fuck. And, you know, and there was times in my career, you know, where people from that town were graduating college and they had a kid on the way and they were married and they were buying their first home and stuff. And I'm in my mid to late 20s and I'm like playing in Poughkeepsie and, you know, there's 10 people at the gig and I'm looking around, we're trying to meet somebody at the gig so we can go sleep on their floor, you know, and I just got off the phone with a buddy at home. It's like, dude, I got number 2 on the way or whatever. You know what I mean? You know, I just bought a boat, you know, and I'm like, fuck, you know, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that until, you know, Rise Against kind of reached some level of success, but I wouldn't change it, you know, for the world.
Well, this is the great thing I've learned from talking to so many musicians, because everybody that's a musician, with rare, I mean, like 99.99% of the people, you know, have struggled like that, but no one's been unhappy.
Oh, no. Yeah, I don't think I was never unhappy. And matter of fact, like, in the salad days, so to speak, in the struggling years, just some of the greatest times of my life.
Yeah,
you know, because at least I always still had this perpetual, everlasting community thing happening. I knew that I was going to be like, holy shit, next month I get to be in Canada, or I get to be, you know, I went to Europe 10 times for free. I got paid to go do it. You know, it may not very much at the time, but I got to go to Japan. I got to go to Australia. I got to go to all these places that I was coming home and having to work day jobs, you know, at the time.
Sure.
But I was still getting to go to these places and go and play.
And play your instrument, man. That is what makes this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so cool.
It's invaluable.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. What a great, very cool story, man. I appreciate it. Definitely pat yourself on the back, because most people do not do that, man. As you know, most people just repeat, wash, rinse, repeat, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to get in that cycle of, because when you get a little too self-congratulatory, I feel like that also promotes like, I'm done. We did it. And it's like, I'm not fucking done.
Yeah.
You know? I've gotten to a certain, thankfully, Rise Against has achieved a certain amount of success, but I mean, speaking for myself, I'm not done.
Good.
You know, there's still many things I want to do and keep doing. And I'm going to die up there. You know, I'm not, somebody said this, a real estate agent of mine was like, well, you know, and maybe eventually you could sell this and one day retire. And I just looked at her like, what are you talking? I was like, I'm dying up there. Like, you think I'm retired? There's no retiring. Like, why would I do this for as long as I've done it and sacrifice and, you know, do everything I've done to do the American guy thing? And like, what am I going to fucking do? Get an RV or, you know what, you know, I don't fish. I don't.
Right. but a lot of that too is there's the external things you've been doing, like taking care of your body. You don't like, I mean, dude, you're 10 years younger than me, and I know the same thing happens to you. If you look at Facebook and you look at the kids you went to high school with, it's like,
oh, yeah.
Holy, but you're not in that situation. You've done another thing deliberately.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the retirement comes when you feel like you're
really tired.
Time for yourself. Yes, you're tired. You need time for yourself. You need time to do all these things, which I have always made that time for myself. I have been able to, and fortunately I have a profession that I've been able to find that kind of time because it's not normal hours. So, you know, I'm not busy for 8 hours a day doing something, and unless I'm on tour, I'm just fucking gone, you know. But even then, you know, I have time to go and do, I mean, basically I work an hour and a half every day, you know, on tours. The other time is either traveling somewhere or just kind of sitting around with nothing to do. And so you find the time to do something for yourself. So I get that. But not ever, there being a period in my life where I don't have the next thing to look forward to would just be awful for me. And that's what's been the worst about this thing lately, is because, you know,
the COVID.
We don't know, you know, whatever. But I Google vaccines every day. And like, I'm a fan of, I like know the front runners and when they're supposed to announce and all that stuff. So that's kind of where I've been. But I'm a kind of a person that just scrambles and finds other things to keep myself busy as well, you know, and I've always done that. Yeah. And I want to stay positive about things. It's real easy, especially now, for so many people to get sort of mired in depression, and I just don't let myself do that, you know. I just sort of look for the good things. I Google the positive aspects of it, and I try to turn it into a positive. I feel like the world's on pause right now, and then once we come out of it, there's things about ourselves we could change that we never had time to change, you know, because we were moving so fast. And now we have a chance to sort of take stock and go, oh, well, I don't really do that anymore, but I would like to put more time into this. So.
But, and again, not to sound like I'm blowing smoke, but you've rewritten your ending already. And when you've rewritten your ending once, it's like second, you know what I'm saying? It's not, you're used to doing that.
It wasn't in the cards for me to get out of Sherman fucking Texas. And 400 pounds and not be with the girl I met in high school and I have a bunch of kids and be working a shitty job that I fucking hated, but I was just like, oh, just get through. That was what was supposed to happen. And I think my mother honestly probably would have been thrilled at that. She's very proud of my brother and I and what we got to do, and she knows our dad would be so proud of us. But, you know, if I had stayed there, I think she would have probably been happier. But yeah, that was not going to happen.
Good story, man. Happy for you, man. And I'm sure I know you're happy for yourself.
Okay.
You and your brother, you started a band, you mentioned it, Hagfish, which was kind of like an alt rock band. And then that band kind of morphed into another band called Armstrong. What led to that change there?
Well, Hagfish started in high school for us. And like I said, we had gotten obsessed with a band called The Descendants that were on SST Records, which was like the label that was Greg Ginn from Black Flag. And SST were such a seminal, they were the first label to send Soundgarden, Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., huge label. It's super important. The Descendants were what became known as pop punk. They had these really amazing love songs, but they were done very aggressively. The musicians in the band were always top notch, just amazing. You know, they sort of defined the thing that my brother and I loved about the umbrella of punk rock, where it was like, you could be a punk rock musician and still be just an assassin at your instrument. And I mean, like, top of the line, amazing guitar player, bass player, drummer. If you listen to any Descendants record, if somebody wants to scoff and, oh, punk rock, I would challenge any one of those dudes. I don't care how good they are on their instrument to play any Descendants song, any one of them.
I have not checked them out. What should I start with if I want to listen to Descendants?
Try Descendants. It's a record called All. It's the last record that the Descendants, they were together until about 1987, and then they changed their name to All. They got a different singer. Milo, their singer, had gone to college, and they have a record called Milo Goes to College, actually.
What a great name.
But they changed their name to All, and they had another succession of singers, and All music is like Mahavishnu Orchestra with melody. It's insane.
Okay.
But Descendants were the band that it scratched so many itches for us, because they would do these crazy prog rocky instrumental jams that my brother and I, being like nerdy musicians, could sit at home and try to learn how to play. Their bass player, Carl Alvarez, is just this phenom that, in a Winnie 4-bar verse, he's from here to here and every note in between. They're unbelievable. And their drummer was not only the greatest punk rock drummer I'd ever heard play in my life, he was also probably one of the greatest drummers I'd heard play in my life. As a result, his name's Bill Stevenson. He's Rise Against's producer. He's produced almost every Rise Against record. He was the drummer for Only Crime. He produced Hagfish records. He produced the Armstrong record. I've had an involvement with Bill for over 25 years now, and at the time, Bill was in the Descendants, but he was also in Black Flag.
Oh,
he was like 16 or 17. Yeah. And so he was on all these records. His name was on all these records that my brother and I were obsessed with. He was the common bond, the common thread. He was also producing records by the other bands we were listening to. There's a band, Big Drill Cars, a band called The Chemical People, all these other bands, and Bill was producing those records. And so Hagfish just wanted to basically rip off everything he was doing. And Hagfish became our career for 10 years. I mean, that's what I quit high school for. And we went to, now the Descendants had changed their name to All. Mm-hmm. They had come through Dallas, and we went and saw them. I was 16 and basically just punished Bill and was like, I was so excited to meet him. Punk rock, so it was very approachable. Their van was out in the parking lot, and they're just hanging out, and you just walk up and you talk to them. It wasn't some sort of rock star punk or whatever. And they were playing a really shitty punk club that was basically condemned. And so we met them, and the next year they came through because they toured constantly. They toured every year. And so we were able to open for them. We had a very sort of larval version of Hagfish. And for some reason, he saw something in us. We were terrible, but he took us under his wing and started talking to us. And we went through some lineup changes and then landed on one that was just good. Our drummer was amazing. Our singer was a great writer. And at this time, this is the early 90s, so the major labels were descending on major cities. And every label wanted a Nirvana or they wanted a Green Day.
Right.
Green Day were pop punk. And so they needed a Green Day. This label, London Records, which had been ZZ Top, it had been the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, I remember all those. There was a blue label with sort of script London. Yeah, sure. I have tons of records.
So they needed a pop punk band, and Hagfish in Dallas just ended up being their version of that. Even though we didn't sound anything like Green Day, to us, it was these genre classes of different styles of pop punk. Green Day were more Buzzcocks and British, and we were more Descendants and, what was going on in California. But they signed us, and so we had a budget, and now Bill, the band All, had gotten signed to a major label. They had gotten signed to Interscope.
Oh, okay.
So for the same reasons, everybody wanted a pop punk band. And they had invested money into the Blasting Room, which is a studio that's in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is where they lived at the time, that we still record at. I'm there every 2-3 years for 2 or 3 months making records. And I have been every
makes Rise Against or with your other projects?
All of them. But with Rise Against, very, yeah. Rise has done I don't even know how many records now there.
So that's like Bill's home studio, basically.
Bill's home studio.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
Hagfish was probably the second band to record there in 95.
Very cool.
Yeah. And so that started this sort of long projected history that I've had with Bill, from being just obsessed with him when I was a kid to now having this ongoing, you know, career and working relationship and just family too, you know. So Hagfish ran its course in about 98. It's from about 91 until about 98, 99. And we broke up, and I realized I had quit high school for this, and this is all I was supposed to do, you know, all I could do, all I knew how to do. And so I started just calling people, like, do you need a guitar player? Do you know somebody who needs a guitar player? I went out to California for a little while to try to make that happen. I don't know what I was doing. I was a kid. I traded a Les Paul for a car. It was this Les Paul that I so wish I still had. It
must have been a hell of a Les Paul to get you a car.
It was like an 81 Sonic Blue, so it was a little bit metallic, a little bit like a gold top, but it was blue, and it was a weird color they made just for like 81. I think it was to appeal to sort of the post-punk new wave crowd, you know, so it was like a different color. It was a standard. And the car broke down on me in the desert in Arizona, so it was like nothing. It's such bullshit. But anyway, so I was in LA for a few months, staying with a friend, washed out. As I'm coming home, for some reason before I left, the bass player for Gwar lived in Dallas, and he was a fan of Hagfish. And he had mentioned that they were looking for a guitar player, and they had thought of me, and I did not know why. They didn't know I really had like a thrash metal background or whatever, other than the fact that I had told him that he had been in a band called Rigor Mortis, and that my brother and I worshiped him. They were like the Dallas thrash band. We saw them open for Slayer. They were on Capitol Records. They were doing it, you know, and they were from Dallas. We loved them. Well, Rigor Mortis had broken up. Their guitar player, Mike Scascia, had gone to ministry. He's the greatest metal guitar player I've ever. He unfortunately died on stage.
Oh my God!
Great way to go. In the middle of a solo, in the middle of a guitar. Casey went to Gwar. He had mentioned me. He said they had thought about me. So anyway, I'm driving back home. I got a ride back home to Dallas to go sleep on my brother's couch because I was a fucking loser. And Gwar called my brother's house to have me come audition for him. And I needed a gig, and I never thought about joining Gwar. And frankly, I wasn't the biggest fan of Gwar. You know, I was a big fan of like other thrash metal, but I wasn't such a big fan of Gwar at the time. But I wanted to do it because, I mean, what the fuck else was I doing? And this was an opportunity to do something pretty big and something just
totally different. Yeah, totally different. Yeah.
So I took it really seriously, and I have to say it elevated my playing to like a different status and level, because the guy I was replacing was also a Dallas guy. His name was Pete Lee, and he was unfucking real. He's such a good guitar player. He's an amazingly good guitar player. And I had been playing, you know, like pop punk and shit for a long time, you know. And so I didn't expect to get the gig, but they flew me out to Richmond, Virginia, and I did the audition, and I got the gig. And within a few weeks, I'm walking on stage, you know, in Philadelphia, in this big, you know, the shoulder pads were out to here, these dinosaur feet, and like, it was gnarly. And
that's got to make playing on stage difficult, man.
Well, and I also had these like cheekbones that I couldn't see my guitar below, you know, so I had to learn how to play the whole set without being able to see the fretboard, which was
not
good.
easy. Wow, but you like to, you know, you like to be able to look down there and see what's going on.
Because it's ambitious stuff, you know, it's speed metal, so it's super, you know, like crazy and fast and syncopated. And then I was the lead guitar player, so, you know, Pete was just, you know, speed metal, ridiculous, sweeping arpeggios and all the whole thing, and holy fuck. So it was a lot. I was in over my head, and it was great, and it was exhilarating, and I got to go, and I never toured on a bus before because Hagfish weren't that big, and you know, and it was awesome. Eventually, it ended up not being exactly what I was cut out for. I felt. And so there was also some drug things happening that I was used to. I wasn't some square, but it wasn't normal, you know, recreational drug use that musicians do. That
Yeah.
It was problems. And so I sort of, I mean, fuck, I was young and idealistic, and I wanted to do something more of like what I had been doing in Hagfish, and I had a bunch of songs left over. And my brother and I conceptualized the Armstrong thing. Again, Bill was going to record it. He had a label at the time. He was going to put us out. Brad from Gwar, who is just an amazing, just an amazing drummer. He recorded the record with us, and we did it. And that's where I felt like my heart was at the time. It was back with my brother. And so I quit Gwar to go do that. And that was super short-lived because we got out and realized immediately Bill's label was real small. We toured with All, which was, you know,
yeah,
for like 3 months immediately. Just went toured. No one cared. My brother couldn't do it anymore. So he was making no money at all. And he was married and they had a mortgage. And I found some friends and went and did some more tours. And still just no one gave a shit. And so
about Armstrong.
Yeah.
So it's just like didn't for whatever reason didn't take off.
Didn't take off.
Yeah. That
so
sucks.
then I found myself back in the drawing board of like, okay, guitar for hire, you know, and sort of lamenting and regretting like the decision just to leave Gwar. So it was like, at least I was making a living, you know, playing music. It was all I ever wanted to do. I never had some lofty goal of even owning a house. I just wanted to be able to play music as my my job.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't care if I was renting a house or a place with 2 other people for the rest of my life and just scraping by and, you know, maybe a car payment or whatever. That's all I cared about. And so I got a call from Russ Rankin to start Only Crime. And Only Crime, Russ was in a band called Good Riddance, and he had a guy with him from a band called Bane, a guy named Aaron Dahlbeck. And Aaron had also been in a band called Converge. So these guys had some names, and they had crowds with their bands. They had like, their bands on their own were headliners. You know, they would play clubs and sell them out on their own. And they were teaming up, and they thought of me. And I think at the time, it was because I'd come recommended, but also I didn't drink or smoke or do drugs, and neither one of them wanted to deal with people that did. They wanted this to be a real serious effort because both their bands.
It's so much less drama.
Absolutely.
And that's being. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, and that's kind of how they said it, you know, as well. And so, hang on a second. I brought my brother into it because my goal is to always play with him.
Yeah. Which I think is so cool. I think it's great.
Yeah. And because my brother also didn't drink or smoke or do drugs.
Yeah.
And he's also the best bass player I know. I mean, without even the drama of like that, he's not just like, oh, he doesn't drink or smoke or do drugs and he can play bass. It's like, we would be lucky to have that dude in our band.
Right. Who's old? You guys twins or no?
No, we're 19 months apart.
Okay.
So we're very, very, you know, but he's like, we look a lot alike. You know?
Yeah.
He's also, we also.
19 months apart too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My 2 kids. Yeah.
He also is follically challenged and.
Right on.
Yeah. So, and then Bill Stevenson was like, hey, I want to play drums in this. You know, all weren't busy. Descendants hadn't gotten back together yet. Descendants got back together a few years back, and it's been this huge success. And they're all doing the Descendants again because Descendants were just seminal and such an influential band when they were together and back then. But at the time, he was just the world's most prolific punk rock producer. Like every punk rock band was getting billed to produce their record. Wow. And he was just sick of sitting in the studio. He wanted to play in a band. And he loved us. He loved Hagfish. He had produced Good Riddance. Good Riddance had recorded their records with him. And he signed on to do it. So we're like, holy shit, this will be great. Like this guy's 4th band. It was like Black Flag, Descendants, All, and then this, you know. And It was a great fun. It was awesome. And no one really cared. But we toured a lot, which was great. I was working day jobs when I was coming home just for the chance of being in this awesome band, this thing we all believed in, and playing with Bill and everything like that. I was working in a video store. I was doing construction, which I have no business doing at all. And we were, touring Europe. We were going to Japan. We were doing American tours. It was great.
Who was it? Was Bill's label funding these tours?
Oh, we were on Fat Records, which is
yeah.
Because Good Riddance were they were one of the bigger bands on Fat Records. They still are. They were like one of the original bands. It's like Strung Out, Lagwagon, Good Riddance. They were like one of the original Fat Wreck bands. So Fat Wreck realized that Russ was starting a new band, so they were interested sort of from the get-go, and so we had that going as well. And so we were able to go tour with Fat Wreck bands. We did the Fat Wreck tour of Japan, and so we already had like that sort of fan base going, which really helped us out getting started.
What is it? Sorry to interrupt. I had a question about Japan, if you're okay.
Yeah.
It's so hard to, Japan's such like an orderly society. It's really hard to see Japanese fans going nuts at a punk concert, but do they? Or do they behave differently than like when you're playing in Scranton or
down and when you're done with the song, they'll clap and then they stop together and then it's super quiet and you can hear a pin drop. And it's because they're courteous. They want to hear what you have to say. They don't talk amongst themselves between songs. And when you're playing, they're stoked and they're into it. And they'll even stage dive and they'll do stuff. But between the songs, there's like a period of a little bit of commotion and then it's quiet. And it's so weird to get used to. It's awesome. Yeah. You'll realize, oh, wow, they're just being courteous. And like, for instance, the mask thing that everybody's doing here now, they've been doing that there forever. And it's because if they were sick, they were courteous to their common man and they didn't want to get anybody else sick. So they wear a mask. And so over there, the train stations or whatever, just public, there's people wear masks all the time. They've been doing it, I've been going there for years now. They do it there. And I always wondered what it was about. Do you realize? Because they have fucking common courtesy, unlike most people. Yeah. You know what I mean? They care.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. They actually give a shit about, like, it's not all about me. It's a totally, but Asian, I think that's why they're a lot more chilled out than us too. They're not looking about, got to get ahead. And there's nothing wrong with being ambitious, but you could be ambitious at not someone else's and still be balanced and not necessarily at someone else's expense, which I think is the big difference.
Culture. I feel like the rest of the world could take so much.
Yeah.
Especially right now. But
yeah,
so Only Crime was as busy as it could be because Bill still was at the time the world's most prolific, called for punk rock producer. So it wasn't full time, but that band toured with Rise Against. And that's where I had met the guys before because a buddy of mine was filling in for them. They always had trouble finding the right guitar player. And they had a guy subbing for them, and they came through Dallas and played it on their first tour. And a buddy of mine was subbing for him, and a guy that Hagfish had been on the label. Actually, Hagfish at one point, Fat Wreck had an offshoot label called Honest Dons.
Okay.
And there was a band called the Teen Idols. That guitar player was subbing for Rise Against. This is their first tour, and this is how I met him. I went to that show and met him then. But then Only Crime years later got to go tour with him. And this is as they were sort of on their steady ascension. They were doing really well. They were still in a van, but that song Swing Life Away, the acoustic song, was a big hit at the time. So they were doing really, really well. And because Bill was our drummer and Bill had produced their record, already been producing their records, and they were friends with Russ, they asked us to go tour with them. And I just kind of developed a friendship with all three of them. Well, everyone in the band, even the guitar player that I replaced. But it just clicked, I just felt even then, I was like, I could play with these guys, there was something different about them. At the time, the Warped Tour had sort of taken over punk rock, and it was all these genres. And there was these like screamo, and then like the guys that were doing the swoosh hair and eyeliner, and there was such an image involved with so much punk rock at the time. And Rise Against weren't doing that. Rise Against were doing it the way like Bad Religion had done it, or whoever else. They were just normal looking dudes going up there. Tim still has this fucking amazing voice, and they just let that do the
incredible voice, man.
It's fucking insane. To this day, it's still
every song, it's so consistent, man.
Yeah, he's one of a kind, man. I play with so many people, and still to this day, I'm in awe of that guy. And consider myself very, very lucky that I get to play with him. But I saw that then, and they go in with just a backdrop, and it was the best show you'd seen, and it was because they just were so fully formed and actualized, and just what you were getting was this thing that looked like it had taken years to develop, but it was just this sort of chemistry of what was happening. And so I don't know what clicked with them or whatever, but it seemed as even then that there was sort of problems going on. And I don't know why I even felt it then. Like, I think I'm going to play in this band someday. I mean, it was this crazy feeling.
But I'll tell you something. I've probably spoke to 25 people that had that same experience. Like, I just felt it,
Yeah.
So I think sometimes,
yeah. When you just feel like, oh, wow, this could happen. I think it's the same way with relationships too. You meet some person that you're like, I feel something here. Even if like, say you're in a relationship at the time and it's not happening right then, like, world, we could have worked out, and so that's definitely how it felt. And I've felt that a few times, and it's always been things that worked out for me and then that I ended up doing. Because I sort of brushed over. I've subbed guitar for many other projects and situations where this feeling, this chemistry sort of felt that way as well. Anyway, so that tour was in like 2005, and they started talking to me toward the very end of 2006, early 2007. And it wasn't an audition. It was just like, we need a new guitar player and you're the guy. So can you learn this set? We're going on tour with My Chemical Romance. Only Crime, we're just leaving like the next day because we had just put out a new record to go and do a tour for that. And they were very reticent to sort of step on Bill's toes because it was all family. He was recording the record.
Yeah, of course.
It was a record Bill had just produced, actually, the summer before. Or not the summer, but like the spring before. And we were all very sort of integrated because, we were the band that was working around Bill's schedule, and Rise Against were one of the bands that were taking up most of his time. And so we knew what was going on, but I loved the band. I loved the guys, and this was everything I wanted, ever since, I wanted to play in a, and everyone understood. I ended up finishing, they were so cool about it. I ended up finishing the Only Crime tour, and then
you did.
Yeah. And it was like 2.5 weeks. And I mean, from the last day, the way it timed out, I flew from to Chicago on like the last day, the next day after the Only Crime tour, and started rehearsing with Rise Against. And
how big was the set?
I'm sorry?
How many songs were in the set?
We were like direct support. So we were doing like an hour, I think, but they also had 2 years booked. So I needed to learn that set, but also everything they could potentially play. Because, I mean, after that tour, I was going home for like a week, and then we were going to go to Europe for 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Then we went home for like 4 days, and then we started an American tour for 2 months. And then we did Australia, Japan, Europe. It was just the whole year was gone. So on the Only Crime tour, I was just, constantly learning their stuff and, getting my head around it. I found my notes the other day from that.
Oh, that must have been cool.
Pretty funny. It's all scribbled and, looks like a 4-year-old.
What, let me ask you this. I want to talk about your playing. I was going to wait till later. Let's just talk about it now. You are you're like I said in the beginning, your playing is so clean. I mean, it's just like, and you're playing. This is what is like when you're listening, you're playing, I don't consider Rise Against a punk band. Like I said, to me, they're just a great rock band, but it's a lot of distorted, high volume stuff. And normally you don't know you don't hear clean playing in that, because I guess it gets lost in the effect. You are a very clean player, man. And even like you're very deliberate. Like I think I told you, I watched the video of you and you're using a wah pedal on a solo, and even how you did that was extremely deliberate. And I thought to myself, this guy is like a very serious guitar player. You're welcome. But where did you, so a couple of questions. Did you like study with someone, or like, how did you, obviously tons of hours, but what do you account some of your proficiency to, and like the attention to detail, the work ethic? I mean, that's like, it's not easy to do what you're doing.
Thank you. Very flattering, and I really, really appreciate it. It's overwhelming for me to get noticed for guitar playing, because like I said, when you have that punk word attached to what you do as a guitar player, I found more sort of condemnation or resilience to someone sort of going beyond that and doing the work and trying to figure out that
All you gotta do is listen.
Right, this person might not be able to play. And it goes back to the thing that I love about punk rock guitar playing is, yes, you can play a punk rock song or a Ramones song with one bar chord, but there's also a guy like Stephen Edgerton from the Descendants, or Stan Lee from the Dickies, or Greg Ginn from Black Flag, who was basically playing Ornette Coleman. Greg Ginn, it sounds crazy, like he's playing out of key and it's bananas. But then if you put on The Shape of Jazz to Come, you realize he's playing Ornette Coleman saxophone pieces on guitar. It's the most like awe-inspiring, eye-opening thing you've ever heard. But if you listen to Greg Ginn play a lead guitar solo, it sounds like noise. It sounds like he's playing out of key. It sounds like his guitar is out of tune. And then you realize he knows exactly what he's doing. And not only that, he is a music genius that is playing. He's playing outside. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's throwing key and tune. He's throwing it all out the window, like Ornette Coleman. His influences are so advanced. His references are so advanced that people just go, he's just playing noise. But then if you realize what he's doing, it's like, no, he's kind of playing avant John McLaughlin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's this punk guy that was touring in a van. So that to me is what I feel like. I've toyed with the idea of writing the definitive punk rock guitar book, because just to shed light on the fact that it isn't just a bar chord and a downstroke. Those are tools that get you there. But anyway, I digress.
This always happens when I ask a humble guy about himself. It's like, yeah, let me talk to you about 7 other topics.
Yeah. For me, it was the background in metal and in thrash metal, and sort of the palm muting and sort of, I find that when I'm doing what I would call like a downstroking chug, like a, whatever, from my taste, I tend to choke those notes too much. So what you're saying is like, the deliberate consistency and the tight and the cleanliness. I feel like sometimes I have really strong, I've always had real strong monkey hands. Like if I give people back massages, it always hurts them. And
note to self.
It's one thing I don't like about my playing, because I find that I tend to sort of choke the notes too much, and then they're too like.
You're the only one, dude. You're the only one hearing this.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And because you're not only that, your sound is so critical to Rise Against, and it's really the fabric. You guys are very creative and have a lot of layers, great production, great engineering, but your sound is like fucking really critical to the band.
Thank you, man. Again, it's I was really influenced by the great thrash metal rhythm guitar players, Scott Ian from Anthrax, James Hetfield from Metallica, and bringing that into our style. I feel like it definitely crosses that bridge of thrash metal, you know, in appliance. You know, I am not dealing with as much gain and distortion as those guys, but I'm playing heavy-handed in here and in here, in my right and left hand. So my right hand, I'm really bearing down on that thing. You know what I mean? And the thing you have to watch for is pulling sharp, or even if you're not pulling sharp on your left hand, you're bearing down so fucking hard that you're pulling sharp with your right hand. So it's this weird marriage of am I doing it too hard? Am I doing it too soft? To sort of come up with. I do find that I play harder than most guitar players that I know, and I think it's just from feeling like when I was a kid, I was playing to shitty amps and had shitty distortion. But if I could kind of create that sort of frequency and that sort of saturation with my hands, you know what I mean? So then you play on a good amp and a good guitar with good pickups, and then it's just this like, it's overkill, you know what I mean? So I've had to kind of come off of it a little bit. But with our band also, it is a clean, precise type thing.
Very much.
Well, and it's Tim Mcelrath too. Tim is one of my favorite guitar players. You know, he's not just. I'm really fortunate to get to have a guitar duality and a team with him, because he's not just a singer-songwriter that plays guitar. He's very much a guitar player, and he has what Bill calls his blues. Like if you play anything for Tim and he's kind of watching you, he'll just start playing this stuff that only he does. And we used to call it like sparkly. You know, he plays sparkly. He'll just play the tops of chords and come up with these really cool little intricate passages that are, you know, in the key, but like just little 2-3 note string progressions, a little arpeggiated thing here. You know, you're playing the riff and he's just staying in this one thing and doing that. And he just hears it immediately. And it's such an integral part of our sound. And a lot of times it's something that I'll end up playing live because he's singing, you know, and he's got this intricate pattern thing going on. And it's something I never would have thought of, because I'm thinking of, you know, the basic rhythm and playing that as proficiently as possible, and then doing the cool guy lead thing, you know, the lead guitar player, instead of like what makes that verse interesting and what glues that bridge to the pre-chorus or whatever, you know, that little interlude passage or whatever that he just off the top of his head. And, you know, it's like taking dictation or something. You just, what about this? You're like, that's fucking great. That's awesome. I never would have thought of that. Yeah.
Did you like study, or like, how did you, I know, do you understand theory? I mean, you must.
I do.
Yeah. Where did you learn that?
I can't read. I can read a little bit. I do understand theory. And over the years, I've taken lessons. I took jazz lessons for a long time. And
okay, now that makes total sense.
Yeah, I took lessons when I was a kid a little bit, and then I ended up not liking my teacher, and, you know, conservative little weird town and shit, you know. And I was bringing in like, can you show me how to play Paranoid by Black Sabbath? Whatever. So I was largely self-taught, but then got to the point where I wanted to know a little bit more about it. Here lately, my dad was, of course, Texas. So my dad was ZZ Top's favorite band, the Vaughn Brothers. So living in Austin, Texas, I'm able to go see Jimmy Vaughn play on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I've been infected with that Texas blues thing as well, and I can't help but do that. So a few years back, I wanted to get to the level where I felt like I was good enough to play blues at a professional level. Before I joined Rise Against, actually, and I played with a phenom, a guy named Nick Curran, who was in the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and he was young, he's a kid. He unfortunately died. There's so much death in my career. It's nuts.
I think it's just the business, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Nick sang like Little Richard and played like Jimmy Vaughn. Like if you look, Nick Curran, Curran, look him up. So Nick and I had a thing called Deguelo, and it was like X. It was like kind of, you know, kind of like the Sonics and X, and we do some standards and covers, and I was really honing my like chops of, you know, playing the Continental in Austin, Texas, and Gary Clark Jr. is playing with us. And
do you know Red?
What's that? Do
you know Red Volkart?
I do know Red. Yeah. I don't know him well, but when I see him, I mean, I revere that man. You know, he's so good. There's pictures of Red at my studio space. I have a studio space, and there's like a picture of Red right outside my door.
he had that gig for ages. The weekly at the Continental. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
This thing was Debraylo. So we would play with Haybell. We'd play with Gary Clark. And this is before I joined Rise Against. And so since being in Rise Against, I've always kind of liked to switch things on there. So now I've just signed up for Berkeley courses at Berkeley.
Dude, good for you, man. I know you. I wanted to.
COVID thing, it's like advanced blues guitar and stuff like that. But I got to the point where I could do it, sit in with guys that okay, where are we at? C sharp, got it. You know what I mean? And then just the shuffle. I'm just a student of it, and I'm obsessed with it. I didn't get to a certain level and go, okay, well, I'm done. I know how to play Rise Against songs, so I'm done. I never, that never was, my journey didn't end there. You know what I mean?
I want to, we were texting briefly the other night, and you said something that was so, you said, I practice constantly every day, and you gotta stay limber. And I was just like, and the enthusiasm you had when you said that was like, that to me, that's why you're able to do what you do. That, you just have a good commitment to excellence, man, and you can just tell that in your enthusiasm about your playing guitar, man. I mean,
much to my wife's chagrin, because if we're just sitting around watching TV, I'll always have a guitar. You know what I mean? Guitars I don't need. But I'm obsessed with it, and I always have been. I went from playing action figures when I was 9 years old to playing guitar. And so that sort of same, this is a superhero I'm messing with, and then with this thing, I could be a superhero. You know what I mean? There's still this sort of youthful exuberance and passion involved, and I didn't really differentiate. And, and nowadays, kids on YouTube are doing fucking insane shit. Yeah. And so I've never been known as that guy, but I always wanted to be able to, for whatever reason, not that it's like knowing calculus, when do you really use that?
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't need to know how to sweep an arpeggio on Rise Against, like I do.
Right.
And that is fortunately what I'm able to do and make a living doing as a guitar player in a band that people, thanks our stars and garters, people still care about our band, and we're able to do what we do. But if my journey stopped there on my instrument, then I would have to kick my own ass, at least the 9-year-old that started playing back then. So when I see kids or anyone that is doing these new crazy cool things, and there's things that aren't my taste for sure, but more power to them. I'm like, there's still that thing in me where, and I know so many guys are like, why do I need to fucking learn that? Who cares? You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. 35 years into this and you're still practicing religiously. Honestly, I don't have the best perspective in the world, but I've had a pretty good perspective with as many players. You're talking about 20% maybe are still doing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Guys that don't practice at all, and they're pros.
Right.
They're pros. They just got to a certain level. They're very good. They got good at what they do, which is awesome.
Right.
Their sound and their style, and maybe even practicing would hinder that in a weird way, like they limber up for a show, but that's it.
A lot of guys just do sound check. That's their practice.
And they're perfectly fine with that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing.
I'm wired a bit differently in the fact that I'm constantly wanting to learn more. I'm constantly wanting to get better. I want to, because to me, that's the only way to do it. My brother's the same way. We both always push each other to do that. And whether it's, I'll get on a blues tear for long periods of time, and no one knows I can do that. No one knows that I could play I could play a lead guitar solo over a blues jam for.
I'm totally not surprised because I'm not surprised at all because your soloing is very melodic. You pull in very emotional notes, so I'm not the least bit surprised that you're saying that, man, at all. Yeah.
I went down an Angus tear in right at the beginning of COVID that I just stopped, where I wanted to learn almost every Angus solo because he has such a great way of going between major and minor pentatonic, you know what I mean? And it's all so specific to him. And it's like one turnaround thing that he does almost all the time, but he tricks you because he'll do it in these weird ways. And you're like, there's the Angus thing. So I just wanted to, I wanted to study somebody's playing. Now I'm on a Jimmy Vaughn thing where I'm just going to my studio space every day and learning like extra Jimmys, whatever his, all of his stuff. And because
are you playing Fenders now?
I have.
Okay.
I have those Nash guitars, the Nash Telecasters and Strats. I have a few of those, and they're amazing. In Britain, Britton Nash I've got a relationship with him. But with Jimmy Vaughn, it's all a lesson in restraint. Like, man, his brother came up at a time when it was right place, right time. He played fast, furied blues at a time when Steve Vai and shredder guitar players were the norm. And then it seemed like that almost sent Jimmy back a bit, where Jimmy could do all that stuff. There's that Rock Palace from the late 70s, German syndicated show.
Love that show. Yeah.
And Jimmy Vaughn's got like his leg in a cast and he's sitting on a stool and he's playing everything that his brother did afterwards. All the super fired, fast leads. But then it almost seems like as his response to that, he became the guy that would play two notes. And those two notes were so well phrased, came with so much emotion that it was just annihilate you. And to this day, he plays at a place called Sea Boys. He has a residency down the street from my house. And you can just stand right in front of him, watch him play. And I've met him a few times through Nick and the guys I used to play with. The bass player for the thing that I used to do, DeGuelo, ended up being Jimmy Vaughn's bass player for a really long time. A guy named Mike, who was also in the Fabulous Thunderbirds. It's all incestuous in Texas. Man. Doesn't matter what music
in general, man. It's pretty,
So I have this weird foot and some blues stuff. And then, ran into Gary Clark recently with Tom Morello came to town from.
That's where I saw. I was like,
yeah,
that was really, you tore it up there, man. That was.
So it was me and Tom and.
Quite the show.
And that was petrifying when I played with Tom Morello. And then Gary was at the gig in Austin, and I got to rekindle, like Gary Clark, because we used to play together before I was even in Rise Against. So it's like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Morello, man, we've done a lot with Tom. We took Tom to Europe with us with Rise Against as a solo artist, and then he took Rise Against to South America with
Night Watchman.
The Prophets of Rage. So
Prophets of Rage, yeah.
Rage Against the Machine Guys with Chuck D from Public Enemy and
we saw that. I saw that show and it was here with my sons, both my sons. Yeah, it was really, it was really funny. At the end of the show, Be Real walks around smoking a joint with people. That was pretty funny, man.
Character.
It was really good.
They had me and our singer Tim come up and do MC5's Kick Out the Jams. And it's great. He asked me to come do it. I was like, you get it. Let's go up and do it. And at the end, he does a solo and he does like the, crazy Tom Morello reinvent the electric guitar with one solo. He's the Eddie Van Halen of the 90s. He took it to this other place. So he does this fucking crazy thing and he like leans over, like nudges at me like, come on, you do it. And I'm like, fuck. So I better bring it all out, man. So I just go for like an 8-bar solo. And to impress him, I'm standing next to Tom Morello, so I just go for it. And then he looks at me, goes like on the mic, like, "Keep that shit going, do that shit."
Yeah, it sounded great, man.
I was like, I'm out. I don't know what else to do, So then I was like, did more. I'm like, shit. Because the thing about it is, man, nowadays, and I don't think any other generation, if you fuck up, it's on YouTube that night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so much of me, and I can admit it, like, you have a bad night. Or before we were wearing in-ear monitors, which saved my life, there was so many shows where I couldn't fucking hear. And there was a show specifically, it was like a K-Rock radio show where the stage was one of those turntable stages, like this band is setting up on the back of the stage while this band is, and we're moving around. We didn't have in-ear monitors. The monitors weren't on. And the first song, I didn't know what I couldn't hear anything. Yeah. I was looking at drums like, oh, fuck. That shit goes on YouTube immediately. It's like, this guy doesn't know how to play guitar. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. It's the worst. And you shouldn't look that shit up. But of course I do. You get in your bunk and you're just like, oh, I know that sucked. And then you see it like, fuck,
Yeah. There was this woman I watched she's a speaker actually from University of Houston. This woman, Brene Brown, and she was talking about her topic was like vulnerability or something, but on Netflix, really good. But she talked about don't uh, don't listen. It's okay to listen to the right people. You know, don't surrender your power to, you know, because who has the balls to, like, you know, it's some guy probably sitting in his mom's basement.
Exactly.
You know, like, you know, he makes widgets every day or something, or
20 good comments and then that one, you know. And
yeah.
during COVID, I was so flattered that Gibson asked Tim and I to do like a quarantine video for them, like acoustic video. And then Marshall asked me to do a quarantine thing, like my favorite riffs kind of thing.
Oh, very cool.
No, it was great. And I was so flattered. Those are the two companies that I fortunately have a relationship with. Even if I didn't, I'm still playing those two companies. I don't care. I'm not endorsing anybody else. I wouldn't even say I'm endorsing them. I just have a relationship with them and it's whatever. I'm definitely going to buy those companies and play with those companies because I always have. Well, and again, like, goes back to what we've been talking about. It's like the punk rock guitar player guy, you know, those are like real guitar world people, you know, on both of those websites. And you get that shit like, who the fuck is this? You know what I mean? Like, that's not the shredder guy that's on the cover of Guitar World right now. You know what I mean?
That's awesome, man.
A lot of that. And you're like, oh, well, it's the respect. I mean, and to this day, you know, we don't have much coverage in like the guitar publications, you know, it's Rise Against.
Dude, there's like 6 people who get covered in that publication, in all these publications. I'm not being funny, and I don't know what it's like to put out a magazine, but
sure.
You know, if you open them from year to, I mean, I saw a commercial online and I saw the cover. It was like the guys in Deep Purple. I'm like, I mean, I love Deep Purple, but like,
sure. How does the 20-year-old kid, does that kid know who Deep Purple is? And fortunately, they do give a lot of coverage to the newer wave, Animals as Leaders, Tosin Obasi, and people that are really genre bending and moving the envelope.
Yeah.
With what guitar is, what lead guitar can be, and what it's starting to be. YouTuber guitar people, that's an interesting phenomenon. Like guys that aren't in bands, they're just have a successful YouTube channel that they, you know, about guitar. Those guys are getting coverage. I think that's an interesting thing.
It is.
Instead of the same fucking people that people, you know, the older guys are stoked on, but, you know, I mean, I'm sort of in the middle and I don't give a shit about, you know what I mean?
Well, show them once, but not every, you know, twice a year, every year. It's just like,
how much can you write about this guy?
Yeah. I mean, you know, yes, we know Steve Vai's great. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. And to the point of when they do something original, like, you know, not necessarily me or whatever, but people.
Dude, they should have you. Zach Blair, man. All you magazine bitches listening, this is your guy.
But, you know, when they do somebody that is, it is interesting because, you know, I subscribe to Guitar Player and Guitar World, and when you do see somebody new and interesting, I always, you know, YouTube them or look at the music while I'm reading the article. It's always Guitar Player do guys like, I noticed they did David Torn, and they do, you know, session guys. So that's always interesting, you know.
Yeah, I look at those magazines once in a while myself because I want to see should I listen to have maybe on the show and check. You know, do I like the music? Are they interesting people? You know.
Absolutely. I've noticed, you know, and fortunately, Annie Clark, St. Vincent, has been getting a lot of guitar. She's become like a guitar hero, which I think is fucking amazing because she's great. Also from Dallas.
Oh, I don't know she's from Dallas. That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I'm glad we talked about that because I just, you know, I don't think that, you know, I think you need to get more recognition, man, as a good guitar player, to be honest with you.
I really appreciate that.
It was my pleasure, man. Tell me some of the low points or dark periods you've had to deal with, and how'd you get through them?
Well, I think the darkest at first was, you know, my dad dying, but there was also a very pivotal turn in my life to where I realized, you know, my dad was 44 when he died, and even at 16, 17, I knew that was young.
Yeah.
You know, usually you think of like anything over 35 as being ancient when you're a kid. But I knew that was young.
It is very young.
I was able to do that math, you know, like, oh shit, that's not too far away. And so I realized I'm not going to waste my life. My dad didn't want to live in Sherman, Texas. My dad didn't want to, you know, he was doing what he could as a guy living in Sherman, Texas. That was sort of his dream because he wanted to do something in music.
Right.
And so, you know, it's the old adage and it's a cliche, but life's too short. And I think that really, to a 17-year-old kid, was it really solidified that. And I was just like, okay, fuck this. I don't, you know, I'm gonna be able to get by. You know, I knew I had enough sort of common sense at that point where I was like, I set my sights real low, my standard of living real low. You know, I was like, I'll live on a floor, I'll eat ramen noodle, I don't care. But I'm not gonna do something I fucking hate just to have some sort of status in life, or to own something in life, or to own a house, or to have, you know, whatever that we're all programmed to think that we need in life. I'm not gonna do it. And so, I mean, within that year, my brother and I had moved to Dallas, and we were touring. You know, we found this band we put together, people liked, and so we had people putting together shows for us. We had an agent. We were like working, and so
this is Hagfish.
This is Hagfish, yeah.
At such a young age to have that, man, that's a real good accomplishment.
Thank you. It really was ignorance, you know, because we were just like, well, we can just go do that. Because we knew, you know, there's other bands in Dallas that do it. We knew them. They're doing it. Fuck it. We're going to do it. Not even thinking like we need certain things, you know, a van and, you know, better songs or a record or whatever. We were just like, well, that's what we're going to do. And we have people go, well, you know, that's hard to do. And those bands have been at it for years. So we're like, yeah, fuck it. We're going to do it. And so I think sometimes that youthful exuberance and ignorance, when you don't look at the sort of roadblocks, when you just go, you don't even research them. You don't hip yourself out to them. They're not even in your peripheral. You're just like, you just carry on and it happens for you, you know?
Yeah. I think if you're doing, I have this quote, I don't have it handy, but it's Joe Walsh said it, something about the Eagles. He said, we had no idea what we were doing. We just knew it would work.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. And I think, man, I've done that with this show, not to make this about me, but I'm not, you know, I'm barely a good guitar player. I'm not in the music business. And
congratulations on this, man.
No, I'm not saying it for that. Thank you. But I'm
know, but God, you've interviewed, you know, Joe Satriani and Steve Vai. And I mean, holy shit, it's amazing.
Thanks. And I got you now, man. That's just amazing. But when I've done other projects and have like, okay, let me plan this out and and there's an X factor that I think goes into making things successful. And I think part of that is that exuberance and not worrying about, my buddy calls it, don't be part of the results committee.
Yeah.
You know, just do the work. Don't be part of the results committee. And I think there's a lot to be said about that, you know?
Yeah. That's take.
You know, you're interested in the results. You want to do well, but you're not, you know, you're what you're really interested in is the task at hand and figuring out how can you accomplish that as best as you can, sort of.
Well, I've also always, if I've set out to do something like somebody else, like I like the way that guy plays, I want to learn how to do that. The way I learn it ends up sounding different anyway.
Right.
You know, it sounds like me doing it, or me, you know, even if it's not musical, even if it's some biking thing or running or whatever it is, somebody teaches me, there's a way I sort of stumble upon doing it my own way anyway, whether it be goofy or whatever. And I've always been that sort of person, and I'm definitely that type of musician where things, and my brother's the same way. We are self-taught, even though I took lessons after the fact, but when the way I learned how to do things was definitely my own way. And so even like when I was taking jazz lessons, like the guy would show me something and I I have my own way of doing it. And he would always comment like, oh, that's not really what I showed you, but that's really interesting. You know what I mean? Like, you know, whatever.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's important, man, to do things your own way. You know, that's the only way and as you've said several times, that's what's going to make you happy.
Absolutely. And it's your own natural intrinsic sort of way of approaching anything. And I think having that signature or that approach or that, you know, that's what makes you an interesting musician, since we're talking about musician, but anything in life.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Honestly, there's been times in my career where I was guitar for hire guy that I struggled to sort of find my own voice. Like, who am I? What do I bring to this thing? What makes me sound like me? You know, what's my own? Because I know so many people where you know, like my brother, I can hear 10 bass players play and I know like number 6 was my brother playing. You know, I know what makes him sound like him. And Rise Against is made up of musicians like that. I think Joe Prince, our bass player, definitely is that guy. Our drummer, Brandon Barnes, definitely that kind of guy. Sets up his drums this weird, cool way. And like, you know, and Tim is definitely that guitar player and that singer.
Yeah.
Just their own approach. And it comes from being a self-taught, self-trained musician that you figured out your own way of doing it. I think there's something so much more interesting to me than somebody that was schooled from the jump street, you know, from the get-go, and they learned the exact proper way of doing everything, and that's how they do it. That's always so sterile and stale to me. And those people end up usually becoming studio musicians, which there's nothing wrong with, but they're not bringing their own. They're the guy that's going to come in and play that track exactly because you're on the clock, you know. And I've never really played with those guys. You know, I have, and it's very obvious because they're fucking usually amazing. You know what I mean? But there's nothing that they're bringing to it that's interesting or creative, or that sparked me to go, ooh, what was that you just did? I want to, you know, whatever.
Yeah. They could play the Bodhisattva solo from Steely Dan,
exactly.
But yeah, exactly. But it's like, whoa. But yeah,
too.
Yeah.
Was that Larry Carlton or was it Jeff Skunk Baxter on both?
I don't know who it was, which one of those guys it was.
Huh? It been Diaz. It's either Denny
I don't
Diaz.
think Diaz was on Bodhisattva. I don't think so.
Think right. There's that live version where the guy, they get the drunk guy from outside to introduce him, and he's introducing him as a guy named Steely Dan. It's not like a compilation they put out, and he's just like this drunk dude. And like,
what show is that? What show is that? That sounds funny to watch.
It was like a live version that was on like a compilation record of theirs. And it was just Bodhisattva live, and it was great. The intro is like, "Here's the man," you know. He's like introducing him as a dude. But anyway, Fagan laughing off the mic and shit. I'm a big Steely Dan fan too.
Yeah, great man,
amazing man. But so that, and you know, they managed to actually find studio musicians that did have their own approach and did have their own, like Jeff Skunk Baxter had his own way of playing, but he was super schooled and he was super, you know, he was the guy that was going to go get that, you know, gig and play that session gig, you know, whatever. Those guys interest me, you know, that's fascinating to me. But I digress again. I can't remember what I was.
No, it's all good, man. We're just talking about low points. Low points.
The music. Yeah.
Low points. Let's talk about some gear for a few minutes. What's your go-to guitar right now? And let's say what other 2 or 3 guitars would round out your top list?
With Rise Against, it's always been Gibson, Les Pauls, or SGs. It's just what works. And for me personally, I've always thought there was something so classically cool about a band that, and granted, it's the well-worn groove, Gibson, Marshall. When you're playing rock and roll music, for me, it's just those, you know. I've been courted by other companies. I've been, you know, but for what I do and what I've always done, I've always just, and I'm a Marshall freak, you know, everything from JMPs to Plexis to 800s to, I'm one of the few guys I know that really loves 900s.
Oh yeah, not too many people.
I bought a 900 in the 90s when I was a kid, you know. Hagfish got signed and we had some money. I went to Guitar Center and bought a 900 because that was what they had. You know, I have a bunch of Marshall amps. But I also love Fender amps. And, I have that dichotomy with who I am, that I also play like electric blues rock and stuff too for like, I guess my hobby. I guess that's a good way to put it. It is my hobby.
That's funny. Yeah. Your hobby you're hot. It's so funny to ask a musician, because to me, music is a hobby. To you, it's a vocation, but you have a hobby of playing electric blues instead of it's kind of cool.
I go to my studio every day and play electric blues, and I don't touch punk rock or metal or anything. And when I do that, I play Fender combos. I have a Super 400. I have a Hot Rod DeVille. I have a Twin. And I'll play a Strat or a Telecaster. I have a Nash Jazzmaster I've been playing lately. But it's also kind of cool to play, a Les Paul through a Marshall and do the British blues thing, the Blues Breaker. I don't have a Blues Breaker combo, but I should. Oh, yeah, exactly.
I just got that about it.
Combo, but I do want a Blues Breaker combo. The Origin series combos, my friend just got one of those, and those are seemingly pretty cool too. But I think two of my favorite guitar players of all time are Gary Moore and Peter Green.
Oh, yeah, man.
I go down full Gary Moore rabbit holes where there's this fucking video. God damn it.
He's such an amazing guitar player. His voice is, it just makes you melt.
There's this, it's like Gary Moore. It's like, I can't remember the heading of it is. If I find it, I'll send it to you. But it's like Gary Moore playing for the last time. And it's him doing an interview for like guitar player or and they're interviewing him. But he's playing 3 different guitars. He's playing a Les Paul, I believe, a 335 and a Telecaster. And it's just him like just going through leads. And they're the fastest pentatonic runs you've ever seen in your life. And a lot of it, it's he's not even picking, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. But and then there was a guy that transcribes those licks on another YouTube channel that I just obsessed over that and watched those until I got a semblance of it for months. I just went on this Gary Moore thing. But also, I'm a Michael Schenker guy too, so I pour over Michael Schenker.
Dude, that double live record. What was that? Rock Bottom? No, what was it? What was the record?
Rock Bottom is.
What was the record? It was. Oh
God damn it! The UFO live record.
Yeah, the double live.
What
the hell was it called?
I own it.
I have the actual LP, the fold out, the record.
I'm fired here. Strangers in the Night.
Strangers of the Night. Yeah, what a record, man. That's hard to beat that, man.
And what's even more unbelievable is he says that he was an improver in the studio on those solos. They're so well constructed and perfectly executed. And he was in his 20s, and he said he was just off the dome coming up with those solos. I find that hard to believe, but if that's so true, then that guy was made to play guitar.
But like, I do believe it, because if you listen to the early Scorpions albums, he was like 16.
Oh, dude, it's just insane.
That's pretty, like,
the way he constructs, it's so lyrical. It's like a perfect beginning, middle, and an end. The solo in itself is a song. It's just, I could go on forever about Michael Schenker. So I think, some of my main guys is Peter Green, Michael Schenker, Gary Moore. But Peter Green, if I'm on a Peter Green tangent, I'll put on a Les Paul and play through a Marshall. But if I'm on, because those first Fleetwood Mac records, I mean, they're just blues albums, Yeah. I'll just put them on and play along, like, okay, this one's an A, whatever. But lately it's been a Jimmy Vaughn tear, so I've just been playing Strats and Tellies, and of course he was always a Strat. First record was a Telly, but just with him, it's like I said, it's a lesson in restraint. It's a lesson in, I want to play a bunch of notes now, but I'm not going to. Also, Michael Bloomfield.
Oh.
I've been pouring over that Al Cooper, Bloomfield, Stephen Stills Super Session record lately.
Great record, man.
Amazing. Within those records, if you're listening hard enough, you can learn how to play blues guitar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not just the solos. It's not just the solos. It's like, what's he choosing? What chord is he choosing as his 1 right there? And then which chord is he choosing as his 4, and then his 5? Is he doing a minor? Is he doing a 7 right there? Is he doing, whatever? Like, what are they choosing here? And we know what song, the key of the song's in, but this guy could have a different approach to it. These guys were all self-taught too. So what's he doing right here?
Great. I have, that Nick Gravenides, the record he does with Nick Gravenides.
Oh, I've heard of that. I haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, it's a great record, man. I contacted Nick. I wanted to have him on the show, but we couldn't hook it up. He was a singer. He's just a great voice. Yeah. As far as your Les Pauls, are they 80s, 90s Les Pauls? What are you?
All over the place. I have some 70s, I have 80s, 90s, 2000s. I have 2 Les Pauls that actually sent to Britton Nash from Nash that he just kind of tricked out, and he'll relic them and shave the necks down, put new pickups in them, change out the hardware, and they're the 2 best guitars I own. And they're both 2000 models. One's a gold top that Gibson actually gave me, which was very, very sweet of him.
Awesome.
And another one's a cherry sunburst one that I bought from Bill from Mastodon.
Okay.
And they're the two of the best guitars I own. But Gibson custom made me a custom, like a Black Beauty custom with 1 humbucker and 1 knob. And it still has a kill switch that you just turn it off. I just conceptualized, like, hey, can you guys make this? And they did, which is great. I have a Les Paul Classic that is the only guitar I had. I had that and a 76 SG when I joined Rise Against in the first place. The 76 SG was a guitar I bought when Hagfish got signed. We actually had some money. I bought a Marshall JCM 900 and I bought this Gibson SG that I still have. The 900 is at the blasting room in Fort Collins in Colorado, where I sold it to them when did the first record there, and I've used it on every record I've done since. Every Rise Against record, everything I've used this Marshall. But yeah, I have I think 18 Les Pauls now.
Holy crap.
I just think it's so cool. Like when Metallica used to play Gibson guitars, and it's an aesthetic thing, but I always just thought it was so cool. Even though James Hetfield's was a fake, it was like an area Flying V that he had put a Gibson thing on.
Oh,
I still thought, yeah, it's bolt-on. Okay. If you look at the thing, it's bolt-on. I just thought it was so cool. When a metal band uses Gibson guitars and Marshall amps, for some reason, immediately, it's like, I just think it's cooler. It's aesthetic. It's like the equivalent of wearing a leather jacket or something. It's like,
it's a great sound, man. It's
yeah, you can't fuck with the sound. And when you're doing a lot with just that, it's like, because they're not shred or go fast guitars, like other guitars, they make it easy for you to play. They're more comfortable to play.
Yeah, for sure.
You earn it. You know what I mean? Like
even playing, a Strat is more. I think a Strat's much more comfortable than a Les Paul.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But when you're a player like Zach Wilde or whatever, and you're doing it on a Les Paul custom, that's a fucking heavy, hard to play guitar. It's not. It's working against you, and to work that machine is in a proficient way. I don't know, but it's just cool to me. So as always, my respect level just kind of goes up. It also just looks cool. Yeah, the James Hetfield thing was cool because we fortunately, man, it's amazing how my thing has come full circle. We've been able to play with Metallica quite a bit now, and James Hetfield collects and has his guitar tech find, the lawsuit era Flying V's from the Ibanez and the Aria and all those ones before they were getting sued. And because his original white one is, I don't know what brand it is, might have been an Ibanez, and he put a Gibson plate, truss logo over it. And he has a few of those in his boat that are all relict and fucked up, and they look like his original one, but they're bolt-on neck fake Gibsons.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, he's an ASP guy, of course, but he still has those. It's really cool.
That is cool. Yeah. What do you use for distortion? Because that's a pretty important part of your sound.
I usually use Marshall amps like 900s that have gain in them. I never add anything else to it. And that helps with the syncopation and the tightness because you don't want too much saturation. So it's a give and take of, I don't actually play with a lot of distortion. It's just sort of, I play heavy, and I play thick 8 strings like 11s, to make it sound heavier.
Are you tuned down when you play, or are you tuned down half a step? Are you playing a standard tuning?
Yeah, we're like E flat. Yeah. I also, for the longest time in this new record, I have a fuck, it's a JMP head from the 70s that a guitar tech named Johnny Mayer, I believe is his last name. He hot rods JMP and plexi heads, and it becomes more of like almost like between a Marshall and a Mesa. And I've had that head in my rig for years, and that thing, there's so much gain in this head. It's ridiculous. I did one of those rig rundowns for Premier Guitar, and I talk about this head.
Was that with John Bollinger?
It wasn't with John. It was
okay.
with, I forget his name. He's a great guy, but he came out. We were on tour with Linkin Park, unfortunately, before Chester died. And it was like one of their last tours, actually. And Chester broke his leg on the tour, and we had to cut it short. But they came out, and we talked specifically about this head. It's just hot rodded to. It's got 4 gain channels in it, or 5 gain channels.
Good Lord, man!
A resonance knob. Yeah, it's kind of beyond Marshall at this point. But I used it. Yeah, and so I've used that for quite a while, and you just don't need any more gain in it. But I actually end up playing. My go-to guitar sound is kind of like more of a Jubilee, you know, where it was like an 800 more gain in it, you know what I mean, with a little more gain, sort of like a classic Jubilee, which I have the new Jubilees that came out, and those are great as well. So it's not quite as much gain as a 900 would have, you know, on 20 or whatever, but it's more gain. But it's more gain than an 800 than your run-of-the-mill 800 for sure. Just in between an 8 and a 900.
One more tech question. Do you use the standard Gibson pickups in the guitar, or you mod them?
No, I've been a Seymour Duncan guy for quite a while, and I have been a JB guy for pretty much the whole time because I was an Anthrax freak, and Scott Ian said in an interview back then in like '87 that he used Seymour Duncan JBs. And I just made them work. I was like, that's what I'm going to play. And then I just started using this. And now I have a relationship, and Derek, Seymour's son, Derek Duncan, he'll custom wire me pickups. Like, hey, I figured, you know, I was listening to your stuff. Try this one out. So he sends me custom wired pickups quite a bit. And everyone he's done, they just get better and better and better. But it's always based on that kind of a hot wired, you know, hot rodded pickup, somewhere closer to sort of like, I love the old DiMarzio Super Distortions, the Duncan Distortion. You know, I like high gain pickups, but it also varies. If I will get sort of Duncan customs and things like that aren't so wound, so to speak, that are a little more vintage. And I kind of like making the amp work a little bit hotter. I don't really just rely on distortion pedals. It's either in the pickup or in the amp, you know?
Yeah, that's great.
I have for a while used an RJD switching system because I'm not a Kemper guy. I had a Kemper out in the rig for a while that they were fortunate enough to we were fortunate enough they'd let us try out. But amp profiling and stuff like that, I'm just not interested in it. You know, again, my guys, my idols, if Shanker didn't use it, then I'm not going to use it. So it'd
be hard to think of Mike Bloomfield. Hold on, let me set up my profile.
Exactly. or Billy Gibbons, or, you know, those guys. So for me, I worked with the Dunlop people, the MXR people for quite a while. You know, man, I think it's really interesting. Like Yngwie Malmsteen and Zach Weil both have these really small pedal boards, and I was like, that's amazing because those guys. And so a while back, I built now I have one of the Klon Centaur clones.
Oh, cool.
I forget the company name, but it's the
new, or like the originals that are like 600, 700 bucks.
Not the original. It's the new ones that the guy actually makes. I think KJ, I believe I'm getting that wrong, and I know people are gonna just tear me a new one for it. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, 2 hours of great info. You fucked up that info, that 30-second bit of the Klon. How can you do?
I have that for. Sorry, I have that for lead boost. I have the carbon copy delay which I think is the best delay.
Yeah, it is a good delay.
The MXR chorus. You know, lately I do like the Q zone, which is like the cocked crybaby. It's basically, you can set it to 3 different, like, you know, cocked here, in the middle, or all the way. I've been messing with that at my studio. I haven't had one. For the longest time, I've used an MXR Phase 90, and that might have been what you were hearing that sounded like a crybaby, because I really haven't done
You
a
didn't have
solo
a crybaby. You didn't have a wah on that show.
No, it was an MX. Oh, the KTR. Yeah. The KJR. It's KTR. No, I've used a Phase 90 forever on every solo live. I don't really use it in the studio too much, but to get a little boost live, I've done that.
Interesting. It sounded great, man. I mean, I thought it was a wow. Wow, that's really interesting.
Just Eddie Van Halen, you know, it's always the Phase 90. So it's just a small amount of pedals. Mike Tech added one of those Digitech, those white Digitech, you know, he's added a bunch of stuff that I just haven't needed. And I'm just like, I don't really need that. I need a lead boost. I need a delay. Sometimes I need a chorus if it's a quieter part. And then I would like some sort of an effect on that lead sometimes, whether that be the Q zone, which is the cock crybaby, or a Phase 90, or you know, a Univibe, maybe, you know, just something to give the solos a little bit of depth and maybe a little bit of color. But other than that,
that's interesting.
My original guys didn't do it, then I don't need to do it.
Then you're not doing it.
You always need that lead boost in a 2-guitar band. You need something to kind of push it up just a bit. Maybe a channel switch, you know, whatever. But that's really it. And so I had one of those RJD's Mastermind pedal switchers that was just switching, like it would be a button that would turn on these 2 pedals, like my lead boost and my Phase 90.
Right.
Like, and we have a tech that does all that, and he knows this. I'm like, I don't need this MIDI thing. You know, so I'm even tearing that out, you know, not only where most people are going further advanced to, like, you know, amplifier, profilers, I'm going back even further. You know, I want a pedal board of like 4 or 5 pedals, and that's it.
The guys that play in the more raw sounding bands like you guys, and I mean raw in a really good way, are really more like you, and they're less effects laden, and they're more like, hey man, this is what makes the sound.
Absolutely.
You know, and everybody knows it.
Fortunately, one of my close friends now is a guy named Brian Baker, who's in Bad Religion. But Brian had Dag Nasty, which was huge. Dag Nasty, and between Dag Nasty and Bad Religion, you find the Rise Against sound. Like this guy could not be more influential to. And another unbelievable guitar player that has had that moniker of punk attached to his name. He was also the bass player for Minor Threat. So you couldn't have been in 3 more influential punk rock bands: Minor Threat, Dag Nasty, Bad Religion, and this guy could play rings around pretty much anyone I've ever met or know currently. He's an amazing guitar player. He uses like 57 juniors with P90s,
right,
in an 800, and no pedals.
Yeah,
that's it. Not even knows his sound guy boosts him for leads. You know, the other day he was like, I might get a reverb pedal. You know, reverb is fun. You know, just just pulls it back that much further. And, you know, for me, I was like feeling like I was a little bougie for getting the KTR pedal and not using because that was always a Tube Screamer. That was my lead. Tube Screamer, Phase 90. Those were, you know, and I like that. I like no matter how big the band gets, or, you know, we're headlining some festival to 80,000 people, I'm using a Les Paul, a Marshall, an Ibanez Tube Screamer, and an MXR Phase 90. Because I bet you anything, Michael Schenker used that, and Gary Moore used that, and Eddie Van Halen used it. You know, not putting myself in that league, but just saying that.
No, but that's a great sound to aspire to.
Absolutely, and it's been done. That's not reinventing any wheel.
No.
But fuck it, you know. There's a reason why it works. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I would rather take it with me than profile it and take it in this lunchbox thing. Not saying anything's wrong with that.
No, it's nothing.
Fly gigs for sure. You can take the flash drive of your profiled rig and take that to other rented Kempers and put it in there, and there's your whole. I get it. I fully get it. And I'm not saying I would never do it. I mean, chances are I will be talked into it at some point just because it's easier rather than trucking a whole, semi full of shit around. But, for the time being, if we have a crew with us and we're doing the stuff, it's like, I'd rather
do what makes you feel good, man. Why stop now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me your top 3 Desert Island discs. No particular order, just for this minute.
The Who's Tommy.
Great record, man.
Amazing. So pivotal, so great, so amazing. I'm going to say Black Sabbath, Volume 4. So good. It has to be 3. It's only 3. Shit. 3 doesn't cover it, but hang on. Can I reference something?
What's that?
Can I reference something?
You can do whatever you want, man.
Okay. I thought I actually had some written down which is lame. But
no, it's not. I tell this story a lot. I got a guy sent me an email one time. He goes, I love listening to your show. And like people freely tell you about trauma that happened in their lives, sobriety and their recovery. He goes, when you ask them for their 3 favorite Desert Island discs, he goes, it's like you could see the steam and sweat pouring out of their heads.
Oh, it's true.
It's a tough question, man.
I thought I had it written down. God damn it. Tommy, the Who's Tommy, the Who that was my dad's favorite band. So, I think it's also, that's always the first one that I think of. If I think of, shit. And then Sabbath, Volume 4. That one's a little bit underrated, I think, in the big scheme of things. But to me, that's when they kind of hit this precipice of like what became heavy music afterwards, the shape of heavy music to come.
There's so many great Sabbath records. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's true.
There's so many great Sabbath records.
It's difficult. And then I have to pick something that, even though my taste is sort of so all over the place, it's so hard to just pick 3. So we have like rock and roll, and then we have like early metal. But I would have to go with something that was of the punk genre because that's what I ended up doing with my life. And I think for me, it would have been the Descendants All record, the one that I recommended to you earlier.
Dude, I knew you were going to say that.
It's all over the place stylistically. You really should check it out.
I'm going to, for sure. It is on. I'm going to check it out today, actually.
There's an instrumental on it called Uranus that sounds like a Mahavishnu Orchestra record song. It's insane. And you're listening to this band, and these were like guys in their 20s touring in a van, playing to no one, and just getting called real punk rock. And this ain't no punk rock record. Like, you'll hear it. It's the most proficient playing you've ever heard of any fucking band. You'll see.
How can I not listen to a song called Uranus? I mean,
yeah, and
I'm sold. Tough question. Another tough question, man. Tell me what you like most about yourself.
Oh God.
That was priceless.
I feel like I've been talking about that for an hour now.
That was great.
I like the fact that I'm stubborn, and I like the fact that I have selective ignorance. I don't want to hear the statistics about something because if I know it, I might not go and try to do it.
Yeah.
I know so many people that just go, well, and I also with this thing that's been happening lately, so many people want to tell you how this is going to pan out and what's going to happen and all that shit. And ever since it started, I was like, there's going to be a fucking vaccine for it. Yes, this is unprecedented, but this has happened before. It's a pandemic. We've gone through this as a society. We're all going to be back to normal at some point. Like, this isn't how it is for the rest of our life. You know what I mean? And you have so many people that just are instant experts.
They're infectious disease experts. They're political experts, economists. I shut it down, man. I don't listen. I don't read news. I don't look at any of that shit, to be honest with you.
Like, there's going to be a vaccine. It'll be fun. And so that is sort of a metaphor for my whole life, because if I had people telling me what you're doing is crazy and it's not you, do you know how many people are trying to be a professional musician? You know what I mean? That
Yeah,
shit.
you wouldn't have, you might have listened. You might have been influenced.
I can't tell how many people tried to tell me that I should have something to fall back on. That became like, you know, that sentence became, all I heard was, I don't believe you can do this.
Yeah.
You know,
Good for
yes, maybe it was somebody that cared about me. Maybe it was somebody that was just conventionalism and was trying to help me out, or thought they were trying to help me out. But all I heard it was, you're not going to be able to do this. You're some dipshit hick kid from Sherman, Texas. Like, what makes you fucking think you can do this?
You should get a Sherman, Texas shirt. Sherman, Texas rocks, or something like that.
There's like weird bands from Sherman now, but that was the thing, you know, that band THC, there's a band called THC from Sherman that actually did pretty well, but that's all I heard. And it sort of channeled, it worked itself into sort of motivation. So I was just like, fuck you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll get something to fall back on. And for me, the only level of success that I ever wanted was just being able to exist as a functioning human being or as a member of society, that what I did was playing music.
Right.
And have to work a day job. And if that meant living in an apartment with 3 other people and sleeping on a futon and just eating, you know, whatever, that was fine with me. As long as I was like not as a contributing member, so I wasn't hindering society, as long as I wasn't, you know, mooching off someone or whatever, but I was just making a living being a musician. That's all I cared about. That was success for me. And that's all I knew I could do that. I knew that like that was feasible. What happened for all of us in Rise Against was not foreseen. We had no idea we were going to do, you know, what we did and what we've done. And we're so lucky that we have, but it was not in the cards for, I think we all 4 thought we could at least have a modicum of success, but none of us expected this for sure.
Which makes it even sweeter, man, which is awesome.
Yeah, I wake up every day and I know how lucky I am for sure.
You have any non-musical superpowers?
Not really. Shit. I can cook.
Really? That's the #1 hobby of musicians.
Yeah, I can cook.
Cooking. Yeah. What do you cook, man? You probably cook Mexican food because you're in Texas.
I can. Yeah. I can do a bunch of soups. I can kind of cook anything that I put my mind to. I've sort of figured that out. I'm moderately athletic. Not very much. I can hold conversation. I'm not shy. I think other people would say I am talkative and I'm hyperactive.
Great interview, man. It's easy to interview you. Really.
I don't shy away, but I think you need that for doing what I do. So
Yeah.
I'm good in public. I think that's it. I'm good. I can speak to public. That's about it, though.
Favorite place? Sorry.
I was just saying I'm sort of useless everywhere else.
Oh, stop, man. Favorite place you've traveled? Would that be Japan or?
I love Japan. It's great. I love Australia. I think that might be one of my favorite places. The people there are amazing. It's beautiful. There's a little bit of every sort of terrain you can imagine. I think the fact that we do well there, we went down there with the Foo Fighters. We were doing well there. Then we went down there with the Foo Fighters and did all of Australia with them. And then we went back and it was huge. So it's always just a really good experience for us. So yeah.
What a great combo.
We've done the States with them and we did Australia with them.
Yeah. What a great,
great guy. Dave came on stage and played. He used to be in a punk band called The Scream. And so he would come on stage and play drums with us and do a Scream song. And their guitar player, Chris Shiflett, has been a buddy of mine for over 25 years now. He was in a band called No Use for a Name, a punk band from San Francisco that were on Fat Records. They were one of the big Fat Wreck bands, Good Riddance, No Use for a Name, Lagwagon. And he got a Foo Fighter gig. He quit No Use for a Name, joined the Foo Fighters. Hagfish used to tour with No Use for a Name in the 90s. So we've been buddies forever. So when we text each other all the time.
That's
He'll come through Austin. He has a country solo project. He'll come through Austin and play, and I'll always go, and we get to spend the day together. And I love that guy a lot.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, so it's a good tour. And then Dave Grohl found out I had been in Gwar and flipped out. And we bonded over that. He was, "You were in Gwar, oh my God." Yeah, so it's good.
That's cool. What a great band. That's a great combo, man.
Pat, their other guitar player, was in the Germs, legendary rock band. Their road manager, Gus, is a guy who used to book Hagfish shows in Pensacola, Florida. Their production manager, her name is Claire. She used to be married to Carl from The Descendants. So it's like this big incestuous.
Yeah.
So we love touring with them. It's a good bill. It works.
That's a great bill. Oh my God, phenomenal.
I'd love to tour them any day.
Toughest decision you had to make, Zach, or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Oh, fuck. Oh, geez. Fortunately, I haven't. Because I've always followed my heart, I haven't had much of that. You know what I mean? Nothing comes to mind. I think at the time, the best, most obvious and tough decision was choosing my career path, because at the time, all my authority figures were telling me it was probably the wrong thing to do. So that was tough at the time. But then after my dad died, I told them all to go fuck themselves.
Yeah. And
it's the clearest, easiest choice. But at the time, you're a kid, you're in high school, everything's telling you that, go to college and do these, but then it became, I felt in my heart of hearts, like, I don't know. I think you're wrong, and then Dad died, and it was just like, you're definitely wrong. And, but it was hard at the time, you know what I mean? But as far as otherwise, I've always been pretty clear-headed and followed my heart with everything I've done. So there hasn't been any real tough decisions, other than like maybe ending relationships I was in, or, I moved to Austin from Dallas for the relationship I was in. And it ended up being a great decision because I love Austin, Texas. But at the time, as uprooting my whole life and leaving my brother behind and leaving my family and friends and all that stuff that I had made in Dallas. So that was rough at the time. And I was immature, it was like.
How far apart? How far away is it?
Dallas to Austin is like 3 hours. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
But it might as well have been, whatever. And so at the time, this wasn't a great relationship. And we'd only been in it for about a year. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And then I came down to do it. I was like, oh, shit. It ended up being great for me. But at the time, it was really a tough decision,
Yeah.
But other than that, man, I've always, like I said, I've always had a pretty good barometer and trusted my gut. And so, there's been consequences that hang off of tough decisions, but nothing that's ever made me be like, this is going to be such a hard decision to do, Yeah.
I got to tell you, that's one of the best answers I've ever heard to that question. You said, I've always followed my heart. So they really, what I got to tell you is you've had a charmed life. I don't say easy.
Sure.
So I want to be clear. I'm not saying, but what else could you want to be honest with you?
It wasn't by ways of finance for sure. Or, I never went on a vacation in my life. My parents couldn't do that. We lived in an apartment. We lived on food stamps. We stood in bread and cheese lines. Seriously, we lived off the government. And our grandparents, my grandfather was a pensioner. He was the chief of police that had retired. So they loaned us money almost every day. So it wasn't charmed there. It was charmed in the fact that my parents told my brother and I early on, you can do anything you want that you want to put your mind to, no matter what that is.
Yeah.
For money, you don't have to go to college, do anything you want. They didn't raise us with some religious thing that was giving us guilt for, whatever it might have been that we wanted to do.
Right.
So in that way, I did lead a charmed life. And then I was taught to follow my heart and follow my gut. And because I did that, it afforded me a charmed life because I lived the life of an artist, and I can't really personally think of any greater life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I didn't live under someone else's thumb. I didn't live getting told what to do. And if I did get in that situation, like say a job, because I was lying and saying I wasn't going to be going on tour and they hired me, I didn't like it. I was going to fuck yourself. You know what I mean? I kept my standard. This having been said, I kept my standard of living so low, so meager, that it was sustainable.
Yeah, you're able to. You didn't owe anybody.
Right.
You could pull the plug on anything that made you uncomfortable.
Right. Other people in their 20s, mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, you know, at one point I lived in a garage with like 7 other people. One of them was my brother and the others were my best friends. And it was great, but we lived like scumbags, you know. So, you know what I mean? But at the time, I felt like I was living a charmed life because I wasn't answering to anybody and I was playing gigs and I was, you know, I was working and I was touring and I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. So it is that classic case of I didn't chase anything for money and I just chased what I wanted to do in life. And so I feel like if you do that in life, you have led a charmed life. Absolutely.
I've become so much more convinced of that the older I get, that you know, it's all part of self-care really when it comes down to it, you know. And last question, I got to tell you, man, this has been great. I cannot thank you enough for all this time, man. You're a lovely guy, man.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. Biggest change in your personality in the last 10 years, Zach, and how much of that change has been intentional and how much is just a part of aging?
I'm more patient for sure. I'm more patient and I'm less to, you know, I think through therapy, which I'm a big practitioner of.
How could you not be? This is a fucking crazy world, man.
And being in a relationship and being, you know, it's taught me to listen. I listen more. I try to see things from other people's sides more. I try to choose my battles more. I try to be more compassionate. I mean, again, I'm emphasizing I'm trying to.
Sure.
It doesn't always happen, but I definitely am trying. And it's a work in progress, you know. And now I say I can work on that instead of I'm on it. Because that's all you can do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm working on it. And I'm trying to be a better partner, a better friend, better brother, better musician, better bandmate. You know, I don't think I had the wherewithal to try to do that. I think before, when I was younger, I was in it for me. Like, what am I getting out of this? You know, why don't you treat me a certain way? Not thinking that it's so banal and so basic, but thinking, why don't I try to be that member to this person and maybe I'll get that in return.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't always happen, and you do set yourself up for failure and a little bit of disappointment and frustration. However, when you do get that in return, it is, the reward is immense.
Yeah.
And you're being the husband you want to be, or the best friend you want to be, or the brother you want to be, and that gets returned. So I learned that, and it was so, I think it's one of those things you could get told forever, but until you do it in appliance, you're not going to do it until you just come to it. And I had to come to it on my own, you know, and figure out, because it's a process and it's something you have to be taught, you know, not taught, just learn, you know, and kind of teach yourself. It's on the job training, essentially. And I knew things weren't working out for me. I was taking me to every relationship, whether it be romantic, friendship, whatever it was. And I wasn't necessarily happy all the time, except like say with my brother, who I've always had this endearing, great, awesome bond with. But when I started trying to listen and not think about my own feelings or my own bullshit, and doing this for this person that I obviously cared about, or I wouldn't be there in the first place, well, then it started getting reciprocated, you know, magically.
Yeah.
You know,
funny how that works, isn't it?
Doing the whole time, you know.
If you're comfortable, how long have you been married or with your wife?
Oh God. We not crazy long. We started dating in 2012.
That's 8 years.
Yeah, I got married in 2013. So we were together like 1 year to the date.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, yeah.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Hey, listen, I can't thank you enough for your time. I want to tell people so you got a couple of other things going on. First of all, if you guys aren't hip to Rise Against, please check the band out. They're great. They are just such a cool band. They're like rock and roll, man. Everything is great about the band. The vocals, the lyrics. Zach's guitar playing is killer, and it's just, man, it's perfect for the music they're making. It literally is. No, thank you. You've also got a band project now called the Drakulas, Drakulas. Talk about that.
Yeah. Drakulas are just this band that I've had in my head kind of my whole life. It's like a bunch of different influences. And there was been a band down here in Texas called the Riverboat Gamblers that have been really, really close friends of mine for a very long time. One of my best friends plays bass for the band. He used to be in Drakulas. The singer is this wonderkind, like, stand-up comedian, actor, one of the most talented frontmen of all time. I mean, seriously, he's like our generation's Iggy Pop. His name's Mike Wiebe, and he's a force and a legend here in Texas. And if you ever saw Riverboat Gambler show, you know who I'm talking about. But I always wanted to play in a band with him. And in 2013, Rise Against had a rare bit of time off. And I was like, let's start a band. And I had all these songs written that were kind of where Hagfish left off a bit, but also going into sort of a post-punk, new wave situation, like 80s. Everything I do, if I write a song, it's got some sort of sense of melody because I'm such a Beatles freak. So he also had a bunch of songs written, and they ended up working out together. Great. We decided to do a big image and concept with it because he's just a crazy thinker. So it's like a Devo kind of thing with there's a whole concept that's set in like New York in the 70s with street gangs, like the Warriors movie and all this stuff. Each album's a concept album. We have 2 albums out now and a 7-inch, and it's one of my favorite things I've ever done. But it's just this band I've had in my head forever, and it's amazing to be able to get to do it. He tours that band quite frequently when I can't. We have another guitar player, actually looks like me. And so they stay real busy, and we just put a record out with that in April, like right when this thing was happening.
Right when COVID hit, yeah.
And happening right now.
What's it called? What's the record called?
The record's called Terminal Amusements. It's on the Dine Alone record label, and I'm really, and actually there's more guitar playing in Drakulas for what it is than almost anything I've ever done. There's very sort of these sort of cartoony, weird, intricate, snaky guitar lines that I've kind of thought up. It's like my version of Frippertronics, you know, the Robert Fripp.
Frippertronics, I haven't heard that in a while. Yeah.
So it's my version of that, my own like bullheaded like Cro-Magnon version of that. And I sort of lace those into Dracula's music just to kind of, so if at any given Dracula show, I'm playing more guitar than I kind of do anywhere else. It's sort of nuts.
Well, that's cool, man.
I kind of wanted to make it really hard for myself to play. So I love that, and it's a great outlet. And we've been working on more stuff with that during all of this. Rise, I can't say too much, but I have seen those guys very recently. And over the weekend, there was a premiere of a new song in a teaser with a mashup with DC Comics, a thing called DC's Death Metal, which is a whole alternate universe they have that will be a cartoon series, I believe, and a graphic novel. And we have a song with that. And so during the DC fandom thing that happened over the weekend, they sort of premiere a new Rise Against song. And we just did a quarantine video, which we've never done, of a song called The Escape Artist that came out on a record called The Black Market from 2014. And it was only a Japanese B-side, but now that record has been reissued with that song included. So we did a quarantine video of it. And,
oh, very cool.
Up like maybe a week or 2 ago. Yeah.
So new music coming out from Rise and new music coming out again from the Drakulas at some point in time.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So if you guys listening, please, the Drakulas, again, it's Drakulas. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, and they're on Instagram. And, you know, Rise Against is all over the place. Anything else, man, that you want to promote or?
No, just to say thank you so much for you know, considering me here, because like I said, we don't as a band get much love from the guitar press, and it's something, I'm such a guitar nerd, it's something I'm so obsessed with. I subscribe to the magazines, that anytime I get any sort of recognition there, it always, warms my heart and feels real good. So I
Dude, it's
appreciate it.
easy. Oh, my pleasure. You're welcome, but it's easy. Yeah, I've been a fan for ages, and you're a great guitar player. You don't need to be a master guitar player to recognize good talent. It's I don't know why the magazines take notice.
Thank you.
Anyway, man, hang on 1 second. We'll wrap up. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Craig.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Many thanks to Zach Blair and Rise Against and the Drakulas and everything else Zach's got going on. Check out and support all the music that Zach's making. And most important, man, especially nowadays, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Thank you so much, brother.